Hello everyone and welcome to this latest video discussion as part of the RICS Tech Partner Programme. My name is Andrew Knight and I've been with RICS since 2011, and I now sit in our thought leadership and analytics part of the organisation, looking at the impact of data and technology right across the built and natural environment. And with over 110,000 qualified members working worldwide right across the property and life cycle, from land through planning and development, through construction, brokerage, valuation, finance, building surveying, portfolio analysis. It's really a very broad canvas upon which data and tech is having a profound effect. And indeed, our members work across all the major asset types, whether that's land itself, residential, commercial, alternative assets, and indeed infrastructure in all its forms. So once again, a very broad range of assets that our members get involved in. And today I'm really happy to have Simon join me from Catsurveys. So welcome to the discussion, Simon.
Thanks, Andrew. Lovely to be here.
Pleasure. Well, before we get into the bits and bytes and talk about what you're doing in terms of data and tech in the built and natural environment, it's always nice to have a bit of a kind of a human perspective and perhaps to hear a bit of a backstory of you and the team at Catsurveys.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Group Chief Commercial Officer at Catsurveys. I've been with the business for 4 years now, just a bit over 4 years. So very apt timing for me. I joined just before the pandemic started, which is always nice. Great way to join a business. But yeah, so Catsurveys has got a really good team, headquartered down in Essex, but we are geographically diverse. We have people all over the UK, whether they're kind of doing field operations or doing different things within the business. We've got a really good expert but diverse team, lots of knowledge, lots of experience, lots of really forward-thinking individuals. My background, I'm from the utilities background, so I worked in the water industry for many years, and then moved into the water industry supply chain, and then decided to have a complete change and move into surveying. So yeah, joined Catsurveys a few years ago and thoroughly enjoyed it so far.
I remember, Simon, when we first talked, when you first joined the programme, there seemed to be quite a kind of a positive journey that Catsurveys has taken and how the kind of services has evolved and developed. Can you give us kind of a sense of where you are now, but how you got there in terms of what that journey looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. So Catsurveys is a surveying business, and it was started about 20 years ago, really focusing on the electricity sector. And providing a very limited number of services, and as is common with lots of SME businesses, the service offerings evolved over time, the client base evolved over time, and the company developed and grew. But I think one of the key things that always drove Catsurveys as an organisation, certainly from the early days, was really how can the business best use technology to underpin the services that it provided? How can it use technology to really drive efficiency in the organisation? But was very forward thinking very early on in its development about the benefit that technology could bring in what was then and still today is quite a traditional sector. And that's really been the catalyst throughout the kind of evolutionary process of Catsurveys, to drive the ongoing focus on how technology can really underpin the continued success and growth of the organisation, the strategic development of the organisation, how it can really flow through everything we do as a business, and give us a really good foundation for growth moving forward. And as we sit here today, Catsurveys is a completely multidisciplinary survey business. We work across the United Kingdom, across different sectors, delivering a range of both what I would class as traditional and also data-led survey and data solutions, ranging from the below ground through to above ground data solutions across different asset types, different infrastructure types, different client bases, all the way from very complex, high barrier to entry sites like nuclear plants and aviation hubs, right through to highways, HS2 and everything in between. So we're very lucky. We're an organisation that works across a lot of sectors, doing some really interesting work with some really good clients. So it's a very exciting time for Catsurveys at the moment.
And Simon, can you perhaps paint a picture, some examples of sort of specific technologies that you've adopted on this journey that really have obviously enhanced your business and obviously what you can provide to your clients?
Yeah, sure. So we were early adopters of technology like mobile LiDAR, and really thinking quite early on about how you can do mobile mass data capture. And that's always been something that's been really kind of intriguing to Catsurveys as a business. The idea of being able to capture a lot of really high quality data very quickly, and then thinking about how you can translate that data into really value adding client solutions. I think one of the things that has driven that is quite often surveying is seen as almost a point in time service where you go out, you collect some data, you create an output, and then you deliver that to the client, and that's as far as it goes. And one of the things that has driven our kind of development is trying to think a little bit beyond that and think about how we can collect data in a different way. So mobile data collection, mass data collection, technology driven solutions, and thinking about how that can then feed into us creating more of a unique value proposition for the client, and moving beyond just that point in time service and thinking more holistically about the whole of the project life cycle, how we can feed data into different points in the project life cycle, and how we can be more embedded and collaborative with our clients. One of the things we looked at very early on in this kind of technology journey was mobile LiDAR, as I said, but also ultra-wideband mobile ground penetrating radar has become a cornerstone technology for us as an organization. We use it for a multitude of different solutions that we provide to our clients. Incredibly powerful way to collect very, very good underground data if you know how to use it in the right way. We were, again, early adopters of mobile photogrammetry and thinking about capturing photographic data on a bulk scale, and then thinking about how we can use it. So I think those are the three key areas where we really try to focus in, and always try to keep at the kind of cutting edge of what's technologically available in the market.
I guess, and I can always be accused of overusing this phrase, but much as my role is to look at data and tech, I'm always sort of very focused on the fact that it's not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. And I suppose, how would you kind of summarize the kind of value it's brought you and thus your clients by using this technology? Because there is a danger sometimes that people use technology because it's bright and new and shiny, but it's ultimately about solving problems, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point there, because you have to do it with an end purpose in sight. And you're right, and I think a lot of people get kind of blinded by the hype that surrounds whatever the new shiny thing is, and they lose sight of the fact that they're actually trying to deliver a purpose and deliver some value at the end of it, and that's always been at the heart of what we've tried to do. So I think, for us, the benefit has been really in how we operate the business, so driving efficiency in our site operations. Making sure that we're using our people in the best possible way, getting the maximum value from the knowledge and expertise that we have in the business. But also, I think really critically, it's given us an opportunity to create different value propositions for our clients. And that's then given us the opportunity to have different collaborative conversations with a range of clients who potentially we might never have been able to speak to on those terms, because we're an SME business. And we're dealing with some really, really big, large blue chip civil engineering organizations, where it's quite difficult to have more strategic conversations when you're just delivering what would be a kind of spot market service. So it's given us that ability to think differently about what we do, create a different value proposition, really focusing in on how we can solve those kind of pain points for those organizations, and then talk to them about the value of that in a different way.
Now, one thing that I've observed from a distance, if I can use that phrase, around a lot of the kind of the the firms that have obviously over the years been using various forms of kind of data capture in this surveying space is the move now to the fact that actually this is not just about the capture, it's how you turn that into a digital data set. And I guess I'll be interested to hear how you now view that kind of, if I can use the phrase, downstream piece, where yes, you're gathering data using these various payloads and various technologies, but the key once again is actually how do you then deal with that huge amount of data that you've gathered, and what does that look like, and how do you actually adopt once again what you're doing as a surveying firm into this ability to capture and turn this data into information?
Yeah, again, it's another really valid question, because there's no point capturing lots of data if you can't do anything with it. And actually, we've been in a situation a number of times where we've been having really good, positive, collaborative discussions with clients, and they've reached a stage where they've realised that terabytes worth of survey data is quite difficult to deal with, and actually they want that they're actually ill-equipped to cope with that scale of data. And then it's about thinking, well, how do you turn that into manageable, bite-sized actual data outputs for the client? And for me, this is a really interesting space, because it's an area where I think there's a lot of trends and a lot of buzzwords, and people talk about digital solutions and digital data and digital twins, and all of these these phrases which you hear a lot. But actually, for me, the power of digital data is being able to create something that adds value to the client, and the client can easily engage with, and they can feed it into their systems and processes to actually, provide real positive benefit. And that can be anything. It can be, if you can engage with an Excel spreadsheet in a certain way, it can add a lot of value. It doesn't have to be an all singing, all dancing, rendered model of something. It can be whatever you want it to be. But as long as you're focused on delivering value to the end client, and the end client's ability to engage with that data and add value to their systems and processes, then for us as an organization, that is the value of digital data. And that's what we really strive to do. A lot of what we do is very kind of bottom up. We focus on the problem, then what can we do to solve the problem, then how can we engage with the client to make sure that they can receive that data in a positive, in a easily consumable way, and then making sure that the data actually flows through their kind of project life cycle to optimize that.
And I guess, I suppose, to use the phrase, it takes two to tango. Obviously, that there's a high degree of collaboration here between you as a supplier and the client, to make sure that they're content and happy to work with you with these new technologies and these new volumes of data, some of which, as you say, may be as simple as the key information on a spreadsheet. But how do you actually collaborate with the clients to make sure that they understand the technology that's there and understand how then that they can take advantage of this data? Because, as you say, it's a sector that can be quite kind of traditional in some ways, and this absorption of new technology can be challenging when you've got existing processes and people that are used to dealing with certain kind of data sets, and you are now bringing huge amounts of new data sets.
Yeah, collaboration is absolutely key. And without collaboration, you always run the risk of designing something that you think is going to solve a problem, but actually doesn't really do what you want it to do, and certainly doesn't do what the end client wants it to do. And for us, collaboration has been the start point of all of the kind of key digital services that we've developed. And it's always stemmed from clients coming to us with specific problems, having that really open discussion about what they want to achieve, how they want to achieve it, potentially not even talking to them about the technology that we're going to use or how we're going to use it, but more talking about the solution, talking about what we're going to deliver, what data they're going to get, and focusing on the value of it, and actually not kind of derailing the conversation with getting into the kind of nuts and bolts of the actual technology which we're going to employ, but more thinking about how are we going to solve the problem on their behalf, how are we going to create a really co-creative kind of data solution that's going to add value, but doing that in a really kind of open and transparent way, so everyone is clear on what the outcome is going to be. I can give you a really good example of that for us, and one that's kind of started a lot of or certainly been the spark for a lot of what we're doing at the moment. Catsurveys has got a long history in the telecoms market, and historically providing traditional surveying services into the design and build of new telecoms networks. That started with copper networks. It's now moved into fiber optic networks, and I think it's very fair to say that that's a space where the surveying service is incredibly traditional. It's people out in the field collecting data about infrastructure in the field and translating that into some kind of format and providing that to the end client. It's incredibly commoditized, it's not value adding, it's very, very generic and prescriptive. But that's how the market's evolved. So we were challenged by an existing client of ours, a very long-standing client, to have a think about what we could do differently, because one of their challenges is, as a big contractor in this space, how can you most efficiently design and build new networks? Mm-hmm. How does that translate into reducing commercial risk, optimizing program delivery, and ultimately cementing the commercial viability of that design and build process? So one of the things that we did was we kind of thought about how can we flip the whole survey methodology on its head, and rather than send our surveyors out into the field, how can we bring the site to our surveyors? Mm. And what we did was we went to market, we looked at a range of different technologies, mass data collection, and we started to think about how can you bring that site information into a desktop environment, cleanse it, process it, and analyze it in a desktop environment. And then when you need to, you're sending out your surveyor to actually provide value engineering in the field, to provide expertise and added value actually in real time as they're out in the field. They're not collecting data anymore. They're utilizing their knowledge and their skills and their experience to really think about solving problems and optimizing network design. Talked to the customer throughout the process as we were developing it. We went through a range of trials. We engaged with the wider supply chain for this organization as well, and came up with this solution, which has now been in operational reality for the last 3 years, and has proven to be an absolute game changer in this space in terms of design and build of new networks. The client in question is delivering more quickly. They have more build assurance. They've got double-digit commercial risk being taken out of their projects. And it was a great example of how we went from a concept, very quickly operationalized it into the first kind of iteration of the solution, optimized it throughout operational reality in collaboration with the client, and have now got to a solution which is pretty much as good as we can get it in terms of how we're delivering it, customized completely to the client requirements, a very rich data set that they can utilize throughout the project lifecycle. But I think more importantly for us, it's been fantastic in the telecom space, but it's now become the blueprint for how we think about doing that kind of activity in other markets. So we've now translated it into the highways space. We're also doing it into the asset maintenance space as well. So thinking about remote data capture, desktop analysis, utilizing the surveyor to add value, and then creating a completely customized bespoke data output.
And I guess, I mean, it's a great example of in general, data and tech not replacing the surveyor, but really augmenting and supercharging what they can do, arguably.
Yeah, it is, and this is so. We're a surveying business. We're not going to not be sending surveyors out into the field, because that's what that's what surveying is. This is about giving them the ammunition, the technology to really, as you say, kind of supercharge what they do. It's about really getting the value out of these individuals' knowledge and experience. So rather than them, wandering around collecting data, which isn't adding any value at all, they're actually in the field delivering expertise and value engineering, and they're doing it on the foundation of technology driving, driving that. And you're right, this isn't replacing surveying. This is about absolutely optimizing surveying with technology.
Now, it's hard in any of these conversations, Simon, now not to kind of ask or probe around the whole kind of artificial intelligence, machine learning. I mean, is this feeding into your services now? Is this, as I'm seeing so often now, simply part of what people are now using to produce an overall proposition for their clients?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You can't avoid AI and machine learning. It's part of our daily life now, and I'm not alone in using Chat GPT for a
Yeah.
myriad of different things now. So it definitely is, but I think the challenge with AI is using it in the right way to add the most value. And I think certainly my personal view on how it's been adopted in certain areas is there are some grand claims made about what it does, but actually in reality is slightly different. And I think we've taken the approach that we want to feed AI into our services and our solutions in a very measured and and focused way, where we're confident that it's going to add value to the outputs. And if I think about that in real terms, if we're collecting a lot of visual site data, you can very quickly get AI to do feature recognition.
Yeah.
Now, that's not doing the whole process of feature recognition. That's about cleansing the data. It's about doing the first sweep, and then the more detailed data analysis happens. But so for us, it's about optimizing what we do. It's about adding value, but it's going to become an increasingly important part of what we do. Absolutely, because the AI is only getting stronger and better, and as it does, its capabilities increase. So we have to recognize that.
But I guess in a similar way as we discussed that previous example, it's around freeing up, dare I say it, the surveyor from some of the more perhaps mundane elements that can be automated, but then still having that professional oversight and freeing up the surveyor's time to do that high skill value added piece. I think it's a similar story, hopefully, isn't it? That it's not actually replacing the sharp end, as it were, in terms of the high value surveying advice. It's really doing some of those more prosaic tasks that it can do reliably, but that we don't, we realize that it does have limitations, and you need that supervisory professional skepticism of the surveyor to look at what's been achieved by AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's about maximizing the value of the person's time. And if you can strip out a lot of a lot of activity which is as you say mundane and doesn't really add value to the data in the ultimate output, then that's only to the benefit of what the client's going to be receiving, because they're going to be getting more of the expertise from the people who really know what they're doing. I think for one of the key things with AI is it will take a lot of that kind of heavy lifting away from the data processing. And that is the challenge at the moment. Data processing is where a lot of our challenges come in, because the data sets we're talking about, whether it's photogrammetry or point cloud, these are enormous data sets. And the more you can strip out of that kind of data processing piece and do automatically and systemize, the better.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, in terms of other kind of technology, what are you intending to also expand in terms of use of technology? What other things are out there apart from the flavor of the year, which does seem to be AI?
I think for us, it's all about driving that efficiency of data capture. Yeah. So it's smaller, faster. That's always the way technology goes. So we're looking at the moment, and we've been experimenting for a while with wearable tech. And how good is that? We do a lot of work in inner city environments, central London and places like that, where you can't always drive a vehicle into inaccessible areas. So what wearable tech can we have? How can we combine different technologies to get better accuracy of data? Because again, that's always a big challenge in certain locations. But I think our direction of travel is probably more focused on how do we optimize the customer outputs in such a way as they're more readily consumable by the customer. How do we get away from these challenges of terabytes worth of data getting to the end customer? So potentially looking at advances in how we can systemize the data going out to clients, so looking at potentially platforms and how we can put data into a different environment so it's more readily available to the end client, I think is one of the key things for us.
And if I suppose a final question, if trying to get your crystal ball and your predictions out, but for your sector and the clients you work with, what's on the horizon perhaps over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years in terms of the way you work and the technology that may be out there? I mean, we've obviously touched on AI, but any other things you see on the horizon that are going to be impactful?
I think one of the key one of the key issues that needs to be overcome in the sector is how large, fairly traditional organisations engage with what the potential of technology and digital data is, and it's maybe not so much about what technology is coming, but maybe more around how organisations translate their strategic aims into operational reality, because the technology will always drive new solutions, and there will always be new technology. And we've seen the absolute explosion in drones, and and that was the next big thing. And then drones will turn into something else, and AI will drive, and all of that will just carry on. But it only actually has a place if organisations are prepared to accept that's going to drive different value propositions, different solutions, different services, different data outputs. And I think that for me is what I would like to see in the next certainly 1 to 2 to 3 years, is large organizations really embracing their supply chain, their innovative supply chains, to say, what value can you add? What can we do differently? How can we approach things differently? Because I think if we don't, we're in this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy of delivering projects in a way that's suboptimal. We all see the headlines about overspending, delays, and a lot of that feels like it's a consequence of large organizations not having the organizational capability to engage widely enough with really innovative supply chain organizations to actually drive change. So that's what I would really like to see in the next couple of years. People embracing the art of the possible a bit more.
Yeah. No, it's ironic, isn't it, that often when we talk about data and technology, we come back to almost, dare I say, people issues and collaboration issues. It's not so much about the tech as actually our ability to absorb and work together to get the best from it, rather than actually the bits and bytes.
Exactly. We will, as an organisation, Catsurveys will always be horizon scanning for what is the next super technology, which is going to really kind of underpin our development. But that only works if we can utilize it in a way that's actually got a market. And if it doesn't have a market, then there's no point us, even thinking about it. And it's a market and customer-led environment. They have to be willing to adopt what's happening to actually facilitate any change.
Indeed. Well, it's been a fascinating conversation, and I'd love to catch up with you in a few months' time to see how that horizon is panning out. But for today, Simon, thanks ever so much for your time. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to talking again.
No, thank you very much, Andrew. It's been great to chat to you, and look forward to catching up in the future.